Hi, I'm Harold Bell, and this is the Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Work. Some of you might not know me and would ask the question, who is Harold Bell? Well, let NFL great Jim Brown tell you who I am.
So what do you like to say to your good friend, Mr. Harold Bell? Well, Harold has been a crusader for the rights of black people all of his life. He has also been a crusader that has had a lot of friends, not only in the black community, but the white community in sports. He's always been outstanding, always an individual, always speaking his mind, always giving you a platform to express your views. And when I was incarcerated, he did everything he could to attack those that incarcerated me unfairly. And he's one of my friends over the years. We've done many things together. So Harold is truly a man that believes in his culture and his people, and will always be that way because nobody's ever been able to change him. So, hey, that's my partner.
Yeah, that was the great Jim Brown. Today, I will take you on a journey of how I went from a Northeast outhouse to a Northwest White House to become a pioneer in radio and television sports talk shows, and how Inside Sports changed the way we talk sports in America, and how I taught pro athletes to reach back to enhance the growth and development of inner city children, and how I sat on a mountaintop with the greatest athlete of them all, Muhammad Ali. I have broken bread with a president whose legacy became a hotel called Watergate, and a mayor for life whose famous last words were made in a hotel room: "The bitch set me up." Let's start this one-of-a-kind journey in 1965, after I had given up chasing my dream to play in the NFL and returned home to find a real job. As a Spingarn High School athlete, my teammates and I would usually meet after games at the Langston Golf Course in Northeast DC and walk down to the U Street corridor, also known as Black Broadway. And we hang out in front of the famous Howard Theater to see who we could see. Sometimes there would be Red Fox, Aretha Franklin, The Temptation, Moms Mabley, The Four Tops, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, and a host of other entertainers hanging out on the corner with us, especially Red Fox. He cracked jokes for free. Now I'm back home as an adult trying to get my life together. I spotted an old friend named Petey Green. Petey and I both met at the Burning Tree Golf Course in Bethesda, Maryland when I was in high school. We both were caddies at this exclusive all-white men's golf course. It was the home golf course of the rich and the powerful. My meeting Petey was an experience I will never forget. I was forewarned to avoid him whenever possible when I was caddying at Burning Tree. And the guys all said, man, he's a con artist, he's a slicker. They told me that because they know that I like to gamble. And Petey would come out to the golf course on the weekends pretending he was coming out there to caddy. And sometimes he did caddy, but he would always go down deep in the woods and set up this little gambling casino with dice and cards. And he convinced guys that they'd have been out there carrying those bags all day in that hot sun or in the cold to come down there and gamble. So my homeboy said, Harold, don't go nowhere near Petey Green. So I stayed away from Petey Green for about 2 weeks. And then one weekend on a Saturday, I got in early. So my homeboys weren't there, and I was, impatient. Man, come on, wish these guys come on in so we can get on back home. Well, I'm walking about, and I said, man, let me go down here and see what this Petey Green is all about. So I went down there with no intentions of gambling, and there was Petey Green. Boy, he was waiting. Oh, he was waiting. And sure enough, he pulled out the dice and the cards and said, which one do you want to do? I tried the cards because I thought I could keep the swindle off me. Well, man, within minutes, I was back up in front of the caddy shack, dead broke. I don't know what to do, man. I ain't got no money. I don't want to see my homeboys because they already forewarned me about Petey Green, right? Well, Petey gave me $1 to get back on to get on the bus and buy some little tavern hamburgers on the way back. So I had $1 in my hand. So I'm thinking, man, let me catch a ride on back into Westmoreland Circle and get away from here. Well, as I'm thinking that, I hear the caddy master, Max Elvin, call me. Hey, little Bell, come here. He said, look, I got 2 bags. These guys are not going but 9 holes because it's getting late. And, some fast money for you. He didn't have to convince me because I was ready because Valentine's Day was coming up and I had no money to get my mother flowers or my girlfriend candy for Valentine's Day. So I picked up the 2 bags and started walking toward the first tee. Suddenly I heard somebody say, hey, Harold, are you ready for an adventure? And I turned around and I looked and I see these 2 white men smiling. One of them was the Vice President of the United States of America, Richard Milhouse Nixon, and his partner, Attorney General William Rogers. I said, man, come on, just give me the money. So we got to the first tee, and when I got to the third hole, it finally dawned on me what the vice president was talking about. Was I ready for an adventure? His golf ball stayed in the woods and the trees more than the birds and the bees. And man, it was hot out there that afternoon. I'm in and out of the woods. And Mr. Rogers was an excellent golfer. He was teaching the vice president, I'm sorry, how to play. So anyway, I said, well, man, I'm so glad they're not going but 9 holes. This will be over shortly. Well, we got off to the ninth hole, and the vice president hit another ball in the woods. And I went in behind him. And when he came out, he hollered across the fairway to Mr. Rogers. He said, hey, Bill, let's go 9 more. I said, oh, my God, he didn't just say that. So anyway, we go 9 more holes. And man, we get up to the 18th hole. Man, it's pitch dark. I don't know how the vice president even seeing the ball. Well, he hit another one into the woods, and he said, "Okay, Harold, that's it. Let's call it a day or night." He laughed, and we started toward the clubhouse. And I noticed in the clubhouse there were about 3 or 4 lights on because I said, man, I know my homeboys have left me, man. They gone. And there were probably just a few golfers left in there. And I was trying to figure out, man, how am I going to get home? So now I'm waiting out there, out front, waiting for somebody to come out to pay me, the vice president or Mr. Rogers. And the vice president comes out and says, Harold, thanks so much. And he gives me a nice little tip and says, well, we'll see you next time. And I kind of muttered under my breath, I hope not. I hope not. Now I'm left out there trying to figure out how I'm going to get home. I go to the parking lot, about 4 or 5 cars in there, and probably 2 or 3 of those cars belong to members who have taken time out to take a shower, relax, and they sit down for a game of gin rummy. So they might be in there till midnight. And the only other people in there are the kitchen help and the clubhouse guys. So I said I'd probably get a ride with one of the clubhouse guys. So while I'm waiting, who comes out the door but the vice president and Mr. Rogers? And the vice president says, Harold, you need a ride? I said, yes, sir, I surely do. Well, I go to the parking lot and they got this long black limousine. This thing is about a block long. I ain't never seen nothing like that in my life. Now, you got to remember, this was in the middle 50s. And the vice president didn't have any Secret Service men guarding him or anything. It was just he and Mr. Rogers. So Mr. Rogers got in the driver's seat, and Mr. Nixon got in the passenger. And I opened up the door to the back. And, man, it looked like an apartment back there. I got back there, man, and I laid back. And they would drive me on into Westmoreland Circle to catch my bus. And I was laying back like driving Miss Daisy, man. I was cool. So while I'm laying back there chilling out, I see the vice president looking back at me. He got something on his mind. So he said, Harold, what part of the city do you live in? I said, well, sir, I live in Northeast Washington. He said, well, you got any brothers and sisters? I said, I got 2 brothers. I live with my mother, single parent. And, you know, we do the best I can. I was great life as far as I was concerned. I didn't know anything about being black and poor. I was rich and happy at the time. So anyway, as we're going along, he said, "Well, Harold, what school do you go to?" I said, "Sir, I go to Spangone High School." He said, "Wow, you play any sports?" I said, "Yes, sir." I stuck my chest out. I said, "I played football, basketball, and baseball." Well, I'm proud he asked me that. He said, "Whoa." And the next question he asked me made me put my head between my legs. He said, "Well, son, how are your grades?" And man, I put my head down. I said, "Not good, sir. Not good. Not good." So the vice president went on to tell me how important it was for me to get my grades and stay in the books because my education will carry me much further than football, basketball, or baseball. And we left it at that. And I caddied for he and Mr. Rogers several more times out at Burning Tree. And up until 1958, sometimes his secretary, Mr. Rogers, would call me and ask me if I could be out at the golf course and what time they were going to be there. So I became kind of a regular. We became great, great friends. I didn't think of anything about him being vice president of the United States because he never asked me if I was Democrat or Republican, and he could see that I was black. So it was no big thing. But in 1958, I remember a ride back to Westmoreland Circle with the two of them. And I got out the car to catch my bus, and the vice president got out too. And he had this envelope, and he said, "Harold, I'm going to be leaving the country for several months, and just want you to make sure that you hit the books and graduate and get out of high school." And he gave me this envelope, and I thanked him and wished him well. And when I got on the bus, I opened up the envelope and I saw a $50 bill. That's the first time I've ever seen a $50 bill, and I didn't see the president for a long time after that. I went away to college, and he went on to become President of the United States, and Petey Green went to jail. Well, now here I'm back after college, and who do I meet? My old friend Petey Green. And he reminds me that I still owe him $2. Said I didn't pay him when he gave me a loan after he beat me out of all my money. So he asked me what I was doing. He said, "What you doing, man?" I said, "Man, I'm looking for a job." So he said, "Look, meet me at the United Planning Organization on Monday. I might have a job for you, man." So he gave me the address of the United Planning Organization at 11th and U Street. And I met him down there Monday morning, and he took me up to meet Mr. Banks, James Banks, who was the director and founder of the United Planning Organization. Beautiful brother, beautiful brother. Well, they hired three neighborhood workers. They hired Petey Green, they hired Harold Bell, and they hired H. Rap Brown. That's right, H. Rap Brown, who went on to become the executive director of SNCC. Well, that was something else, man. That was an experience. H. Rap Brown was a brilliant, brilliant brother, man. Smart brother. Had a lot on the ball, and sometimes we hang out together. And I remember one evening we were walking on U Street. No, I'm not off U Street, on V Street, past Harrison Playground. And there were some kids out there throwing a football. So I went over to join and run some pass patterns, and the kids were throwing me the ball. And H. Rap came over and took off his jacket and started throwing the ball and telling me, "What pattern you want to run? What's your favorite pattern?" And man, I was surprised. He blew Petey's mind. He was throwing that ball on the money, man. He was throwing the ball on the money. And at the time, I was playing minor league football for a team called the Virginia Sailors that they had just formed back here in Washington. They were a minor league team of the Redskins. A lot of the Redskins got cut. They came down to the Virginia Sailors. So Petey and I both, dad, wrapped to come out for the Sailors. We were practicing and trials in the evenings on the weekends at Anacostia Park. and Rap showed up for one of the trials. And he came out there and he blew everybody away, man. But he scared the coaches because he would not take off his shades or the tam and was throwing the ball on the money, man. And we had another black quarterback by the name of John Thomas from out of Southern University, man. This was a slick brother, man. He could pass that ball and he could scramble, man. So I knew that the Sailors were not going to carry two black quarterbacks. So they end up cutting Rap, and we weren't surprised at that. But I tell you what, he made a believer out of me. He was a great, not only a brilliant guy, but a great athlete. And of course, Rap would later go on 1967 or 1967. We were standing out in front of Ben's Chili Bowl on U Street, PD, Rap, and myself. And somebody came up and said that Muhammad Ali was up on Howard University. And I said, man, come on, I'm going up there. He said, no, I got a meeting with Mr. Banks and Rap had something else. So I went up to Howard on my own, and there I met Muhammad Ali as he was talking to hundreds of students, just standing out on administrative steps and talking about him not going in the army, racism in America. I mean, you could hear yeah. The students were hanging on every word, man. You could everything. He was just fantastic. And at the end of his speech, he must have spoke about anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. And I had moved my way up front so I could hear every word. And after he was through, he wanted to know, I want to see Washington, D.C. Who wants to take me on a tour of Washington, D.C.? And I said, come on, champ, I'll take you. And that's where it all started. We left Howard University and walked down the Georgia Avenue corridor toward the Howard Theater, 7T. And I looked behind us, it was like it was a parade following us, man. All these students following us down Georgia Avenue. And people were blowing their horns, and the women were getting out, parking their cars in the middle of the street, running over, hugging and kissing them. It was something to see, man. I was amazed, man. And we got down in front of the Howard Theater 7T. I remember my man Harvey Cooper. We called him the youngest teenager. Came out of Sam K's record shop with his hands up like he wanted to box Muhammad. And Muhammad, he fell right on into it and started shadow boxing with Harvey. It was a great day. And Muhammad and Ali and I talked about what I was doing. And I told him I was working the streets with young people, man, with kids, man, and he loved kids. There was no doubt about that. And after that, man, we became great friends. I didn't see him again. It must have been, that was 1967. It must have been 3 or 4 years later, because I remember that I had left UPO and joined the DC Recreation Department as a roving leader. I got that, which was an elite job, man. One of the big jobs with the DC Recreation Department. I got the job because the United Planning Organization had given the DC Recreation Department a grant to hire several roving leaders, and they said that I had to be one of them. So I got on another gravy train of working out in the streets with young people. H. Rap Brown went on to become head of SNCC, taking Marion Barry's place. Marion came in town about the same time as I got back into Washington, around 65 or 64, somewhere down there. But he was heading the SNCC, and then H. Rap Brown took over for him. And I became a roving leader, and I'll never forget 1968, April 4th, exactly where I was. I was standing on the corner of 9th and U Street. My co-worker and I, the great Willie Wood, NFL Hall of Famer and Green Bay Packer, was working with the DC Recreation Department at that time. And I know you say, well, Harold, what is an NFL ball player doing working with the DC Recreation Department? Well, you have to remember, back in those days, NFL ball players weren't making the asinine money that these guys are making today. So Willie would come home and get a second job, either teaching school or as a roving leader for the Department of Recreation. And on April 4th, on that fateful day, he was standing on the corner with me on a bright, sunshiny day. We had just had a sandwich in a restaurant, kind of in restaurant where all the so-called VIP people hung out called Chez Maurice. And we just had a sandwich and we went out to stand on the corner. You know, it was about, I guess, almost 7 o'clock that evening. And people were driving by and they were waving, hollering at Willie. And everybody knew Willie, you know, because he was a hometown hero. Willie was a great all-around athlete at Armstrong High School in Washington, D.C. And we were waving, and suddenly a car came by, and someone yelled out, "Hey, Harold, they just shot and killed Dr. King in Memphis, Tennessee." Willie looked at me, I looked at him, I said, "Man, I think we're in trouble." And within the hour, man, it looked like the U Street corridor was burning. And Willie and I had walked around to Sam K's record shop right there on 7th Northwest, right around the corner from the Howard Theater. And just to holler at Sam, check on him. And as we were heading down to the Sam's record shop, there was Mayor Washington standing on the corner with Sam Jordan, another roving leader. And we stopped to talk, chit chat. And the mayor told us that he had received a call from the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, and with instructions to shoot looters on sight, shoot to kill. And the mayor told him, he said, "Not on my watch. That'll never happen in this town." And Willie and I became very proud of the mayor telling J. Edgar Hoover to go to hell. We would have had a lot more deaths if the mayor had not stood up and said no to J. Edgar Hoover. Well, as we head down the U Street corridor, like I said, all hell is breaking loose. And joining us a couple blocks down, right there at between 10th and 11th and U, was a guy who we would go on to become great friends. His name was Luke C. Moore. Luke C. Moore was the first black modern-day U.S. Marshal in charge appointed by the President of the United States. And we knew Luke because he was a man about town, sharp dresser and everything, man. So Luke joined arms with Willie and we walked down in front of Ben's Chili Bowl. There, Ben was standing out front with several businessmen, and one of them was John Snipes, who we call the mayor of U Street. And so Luke went over to find out what was going on, and Snipes and Willie and we talked, and as Luke came back to us. He said that Ben said he had received a call that he had to close down business. All businesses in Washington, D.C. were ordered closed by the police department. And Luke said, "Oh, they can't close Ben's Chili Bowl down. Ben's Chili Bowl has to be open for law enforcement, military troops, and those folks who will be working in the streets." So Luke said, "I'll be right back." He left Willie and I right there standing there with Snipes. And he went off, and so Willie said, "Harold, we need to call up to the recreation department and talk to Stan Anderson, our boss, and see exactly what is it that he wants us to do." So I made the call to Stan, and Stan told me, he said, "Harold, you and Willie need to stay out there because you're both high profile, and you might be able to save some kids' life." So I did. That's what we stayed out there. But before he hung up, he said, "Oh, by the way, Assistant Chief Tillman O'Brien called from I think it was the 3rd District down there at 16th and V Street. He wants you to stop by and holler at him." So I said, I wonder what Chief O'Brien wants me for. So anyway, I left Willie and I went down to the district headquarters. And as I went in, I told the lady at the desk who I was. She said, "Well, Assistant Chief O'Brien is waiting for you downstairs." And I went downstairs, man, and there were cops all over the place, man. They had on riot gear. I mean, rifles. It was something else. So the chief saw me. He said, Harold, come over here. I want to introduce you to your new partners. I said, what? And he put a badge in my hand. I said, Chief, what's this? He said, Harold, that will help you get through the police barricades and military barricades because that's what we will have to set up in order to have control. I said, Chief, you want me to go back out there without a gun? He said, Harold. I said, Harold. He said, Harold, I can't give you a gun. You'll be all right. Everybody knows you. I said, Chief, I'm not worried about everybody knowing me. I said, I'm scared of one of your cops mistaking me from a poor looter and being shot. Well, he stroked my ego, and I went on back out. And for 4 days, I carried that badge, which helped me get through the police barricades and the military barricades. And of course, that first day out there was really hectic because the police they weren't arresting anyone. They were standing around just let the looters do whatever they please, and they didn't start arresting anyone until the second day. And of course, I think that might have helped too. Also, kind of minimize the people killed during the rides. I know we didn't reach double digits. I know we didn't reach double digits, but I always think about Tillman O'Brien. Tillman was like community relations. Tillman stayed out in the street. He was probably the highest ranking black police officer on the department. But he loved being out in the community. It'd be nothing to see him walking down V Street or U Street by himself. He was that kind of guy. So after the rides, everybody claimed they were out there after the smoke had cleared and the tear gas had cleared. Everybody came out, claiming what they saw. But a lot of people I never even saw out there doing the rides. It was an experience that it took almost 3 decades for them to rebuild. Gentrification is called. Black folks who lived in Washington D.C. at the time they paid 10, 15, $20,000 for their home. Now to get back into that U Street corridor, once known as Black Broadway, it'll cost you anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million for a one-bedroom condo. They priced us out. But black folks burned down their own community. And of course, from 1968 to 2018 is a very special year to me because April 4th, 2018, I was on the scene at the U Street corridor, 9th and U Street, when I discovered that Dr. Martin Luther King had been shot and killed, assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. And I was on the job as a roving leader. Ain't that something? And that marks 50 years since that happened. And then, of course, 2018 May, I will celebrate my 80th birthday, and that's something. because my middle school principal, Mr. William B. Stinson, told my mother I was going to live to get to high school. I was going to hell in a hurry. There's no doubt about it. But here I am, 80 years old, May 21st. And then November 30th, 2018, I will mark, my wife and I will mark our 50th wedding anniversary. Isn't that something? November 2018. And December 2018 will mark our first anniversary of our Christmas toy party for needy children. And we founded our nonprofit organization, Kids in Trouble, 50 years ago. So yeah, 50 is quite a milestone for my wife Hattie and I. So yeah, we come a long ways. Come a long ways. I go from that experience into meeting the President of the United States. Guess where I met him? He went from Vice President to President of the United States, Richard Milhouse Nixon. And I really didn't meet him I was just happened to be in the area when someone said, "Hey, Harold, your man is down there touring the ride area." I said, "What we talking about, my man?" He said, "Fool, the President of the United States, Richard Nixon." I said, "What?" So, man, I ran down to the 7th Street corridor and, man, saw this crowd hovered around him, but I couldn't get nowhere near him. The Secret Service would not let me anywhere near him. I even told one Secret Service man, I say, "Look, tell him it's Harold Bell. I used to be his caddy at Burning Tree Golf Course." And the Secret Service man said, "Write him a letter." And that's what I did. I wrote him a letter, telling him exactly what had happened and congratulating him on becoming President of the United States, and that I was working here in Washington, D.C., working with kids, working with young people. And it took about 2 weeks, but I got a letter back from the White House telling the president, saying how proud he was of me to see that I returned to the young people whose lives resembled my very own, and for me to hang tough in there and make sure I finish my education. And he'd be he'd be talking to me soon. I didn't expect to hear anything else from him. 2 weeks later, get another letter from the White House, this time inviting my wife Hattie and I to the White House to have lunch with the president. And our pictures went all around the world. It said, the caption read, "Nixon invites his caddy to the White House." All around the world, man. Yep. And of course, you know what happened after that? Had some great experiences, because my thing was not politics. My thing was to be able to find a way to help my people, help young people. And so first I started out with the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports with Bud Wilkerson. That was nothing but a desk job, and I was very unhappy with that. And I got in touch with Herb Klein, who was the president's director of communications. And Herb Klein was like the guy assigned to look over me. So I told Herb that I wanted to find something else, and he did. He found me another job with the Department of Defense, Domestic Actions, headed by Secretary Laird. And I was assigned to Bowling Air Force Base, where I found the first halfway house ever established on a military installation. It was called Bowling Boys Base. And it was established because Colonel Ryder was aware of that juvenile facilities in the district were overcrowded. So he said, "We can use some of this space out here." So I called my friend, U.S. Marshal, former U.S. Marshal, who had become a D.C. Superior Court Judge, Luke Moore, and told him what I wanted to do. So he carried the ball to Mayor Washington and Joe Yeldell, and it happened. Bowling Boys Base. It opened up and opened up Bowling Boys. Opened up Bowling Air Force Base, because I was able to bring the community on to use the facilities when the military was not using them, like the swimming pools, the tennis courts, the baseball field, the libraries. We had our Christmas toy parties over there. Larry Brown, Roy Jefferson, and all the judges, Luke Moore and Harold, the Chief Judge Harold, what was his name? I can't even think of his name. The Chief Judge was Harold. First name was Harold. I remember that. And Eugene Hamilton, uh, Ted Newman, all would come over to Bowling Air Force Base for the Christmas toy parties along with the Redskins. So there was a lot of things happening there. And of course, Watergate hit, and I was out of a job. It wasn't making so good though. Guess what? My man Petey Green got his own radio show on WOL Radio in 1967, I think it was. And he gave me 5 minutes to do sports every Sunday on WOL. And I was hung in there for about a year with Pete until he ran me out of there. And Bobby Bennett asked me to, would I like to co-host a sports talk show with him on Saturdays at WOL. And I went there, lasted a year, and found my way to WOOK with my main man, John Turk, who was big time up there at the time, and got me on the WOK, and that's where I found Inside Sports. My wife gave me Inside Sports at the dinner table one night when I was telling her that I got this new talk show on WOK radio and I needed a title. And right off the top of her head, she said, Inside Sports. I could not believe that she said. I said, Hattie, where did you get that from? She said, well, who gets the inside word before you? All the athletes give you what's going on behind the scenes before anybody else. Inside Sports. And so that's what happened. 1970, I went to WOK Radio, and Inside Sports was born. Inside Sports was outside the lines and real sports long before ESPN and HBO. So the impact that Inside Sports has had on sports talk radio, not only in America but across the sea. Before Inside Sports, nobody was covering politics, racism, the business of sports, but me. So yeah, that's my story. 1965. And man, this whole thing, man, I think about my heroes. See, my heroes were not black athletes. My heroes were black women. They couldn't shoot a jump shot beyond the foul line or hit a home run out of the stadium or throw a football 60 yards. My heroes were my mother, my grandmother, and my aunts. They were superstars in the game called life. They taught me so much about integrity and being honest. The church was my foundation. Even though I'm not in church every Sunday, but they laid the foundation. My grandmother did. Because in my early years, I was raised by my grandmother. Before that Northeast outhouse, and after it was burnt to the ground, I went to live with my grandmother. And she raised me and my brothers, my older brother Bobby, my younger brother Earl, till we were 8, 9, 10 years old, man, before my mother finally found a place in the housing project called Parkside. But we used to be in church 3, 4 days a week and all day Sunday. Church on Sunday at Mount Airy Baptist Church, man, it was like a revival. My great-grandfather laid the first brick to build Mount Airy Baptist Church in 1893. That's right, my great-grandfather, the Reverend Alfred Johnson Tower. That's right. That is now a historical church, Mount Airy Baptist Church, located in North Capitol L Street. And 2 blocks beyond the church at New York Avenue, there's a senior citizen resident called the Tyler House, named after my great uncle, the Reverend Earl Tyler. Man, he could preach, man. He could preach like Martin Luther King. I'm telling you, man, on Sundays, that church was packed. And my grandmother played the organ for the choir, and in the choir were my aunts and uncles. They could sing like nightingales, man. Church was beautiful, man. So yeah, I come a long ways, and I owe a lot of people, man. I think all about all the great brothers, man. That I was came from a fatherless home. My mother was a single parent. My dad was a deadbeat dad. He was deadbeat. But I had some great black men that I met on the playgrounds, man. Like Mr. Turner, Walter Brooks, Jakey Matthews, Mr. Harrison. Man, they were great, man. I mean, the playground was like our babysitters, man. Our parents, we wouldn't have to come home to dark, but our parents had no fear about where we were, that we were being taken care of and looked over. Because all of those guys, man, Bootsy Harris, Nick Turner, Jakey Matthews, Walter Brooks, Mr. Bethel. Man, we respected those folks. They ain't take no stuff off. Even the men in the projects, man, it was all about integrity and honesty, man. And I think about those great men. Man, I think about Coach Brown at Spingarn. I would have never got out of high school had it not been for him. Elder Biller would have never got out of high school hadn't been for him. Coach Roundtree, Bing would have never got out of high school if it wasn't for him. You know, I think about Coach Gaines, man. Strong black men who touched my life. And the only way that I could say thank you to my grandmother, my aunts, my mom, is to reach back and help other people. That's what it has to be all about in our community. Not so today. These are some of the most selfish athletes that I have ever encountered. It's all about themselves. All about themselves. And I'm talking about the John Thompsons. I'm talking about the Sugar Ray Leonards. I'm talking about Adrian Branch, Adrian Dantley, Michael Wilbon, Kathy Hughes. All them people came through me before their 15 minutes of fame. I remember they didn't have a dime. Now they don't help anybody. So, man, I'm just so proud that some of these great men touched me and kind of kept me on the right road. I'm flawed. I'm flawed like everyone else, you know. But I'm proud to say I never been on drugs. I never stole money from little children, you know, and I'm still flawed. So that's the problem, man. You know, we always talking about we want to hear the truth. Black folks want to hear the truth as long as it's about somebody else. They don't ever want to hear the truth about themselves. And I found that's the same thing. I've listened to Denzel Washington talk about racism on the national show Sunday morning. Nothing has changed, man. It hasn't changed because we don't know how to network with each other and trust each other. So I just want to say, man, that this shout out is to the brothers who are no longer here. And I want you to remember that. The brothers who are no longer here. I love you.
This is for the brothers who ain't here. For the strong brothers listening next.
right. That's for to the brothers who are no longer here. And I think about those brothers who are no longer here. I think about my high school coach, Dave Brown. I think about Mr. McIntyre, Sal Hall, Biff Carter, Jesse Chase from the DC Public Schools that saved so many of us young black athletes and teachers. You know, we're some of the greatest teachers that I've ever known. I tell you, they really cared about their students. And the brothers no longer here, like Big House games. Coach Brown sent me down to him. I think about my coaches out at Fairmount Heights, and Mr. Farmer and Mr. Freeman, who guided me when it looked like I was really going astray. And Coach Brown sent me out there to finish my high school career where I was too old. Elton Bell was too old when he played that spin guard. That's why I can't understand, man, how these athletes don't say thank you, man, in the way that they should. And I say Elton Bell, I look back because I got a telegram from Elton when I did a tribute to Dave Brown when he retired. And I wanted Elton to come in and be a part of the retirement, but he begged off, couldn't get in, and sent a telegram. And then, of course, when Coach Brown died, I had Dick Heller call both Elton Bell and Dave Bing to get their thoughts on this great man. So yes, I am blessed, and I'm glad that I'm here and give a shout out to those brothers who are no longer here. I'm talking about guys like Gary Mays. I'm talking about Frank Hart. You know, I'm talking about Peasy Jordan, Mojo Isley, man, T-Boy, man, Fatty Taylor. A lot of brothers who are not here, man. And I'm saying that thank you. Thank you for making and molding me into the man that I am today. Um, I can walk with my head up high and saying I've never forgotten. And that my good name is worth more than silver and gold. Well, that's going to be it for the Legends of Inside Sports. I want you to remember that every black face you see is not your brother, and every white face is not your enemy. Until next time, I'm Harold Bell, and you can color me gone.